morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to everyone at the Digital Dialogues organized by Broadband India Forum on IPv6, on the opportunities and challenges in IPv6 implementation today. It is my honor to welcome eminent experts on IPv6 who have joined us today for this session. We are going to have with us Sri Anil Jain, CEO, Nixie, Srimati Deepa Tyagi, Senior DDG and Head of TEC, Mr. Geoff Houston, Chief Scientist at Epinic, Mr. B. Nagaraj, Senior Executive VP, Reliance Jio Infocom, Mr. Prasanna Gokhale, CTO, ACT, and Mr. Satya N. Gupta, Chairman, Bharat IPv6 Forum and Treasurer of Broadband India Forum and the audience. In this digital dialogue session today, we would like to understand from the remarks and statements of various stakeholders, where is the opportunity for IPv6 adoption? Or what are the use cases which should be looked into? Or is there a technical challenge either in terms of capacity or infrastructure, or is there a larger trust issue for IPv6 adoption? Where are the things where policy intervention can be made so that we see a large-scale adoption of IPv6? With this background, let me welcome you all once again and get started. Just some housekeeping announcements before I invite TV sir for his introductory remarks. I'll request all the participants to keep their mics on mute if they are not speaking. And if you have a question, we do have a dedicated Q&A session. So please write your questions in the Q&A box. And if appropriate, as a moderator, I will bump you to ask the question directly to the speakers. Keeping your camera on is a personal choice. And if you are speaking, please do start your camera. But in the event of loss of bandwidth, my personal experience has been that switching of the camera helps. Otherwise, just a reiteration of the very important thing that this event is being recorded, and the link will be available for all the participants to revisit and share with your colleagues and friends. Please use the chat window for the conversations on the side, and chat is just below on your screen, so you can click it and start having conversations with the other colleagues who have joined today. Finally, for our esteemed speakers, this is a virtual event, and sometimes there may be a lag of bandwidth or otherwise, so you are requested to keep your presentation pace adequate based on your choice. But lastly, I'll request that since this is a virtual event, we would like to be on time, and we will wish that all of us be within our allocated slots so that we can have a larger time for conversations and Q&A, and it's a better experience for everyone today. With this, let me invite Mr. TV Ramachandran, President, Broadband India Forum, for his introductory remarks. TV sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anupam. Good morning, distinguished attendees, ladies, gentlemen. I noticed that Mr. Anil Jain has also just come on. Good morning, Mr. Anil Jain. Good morning again to our overseas superstar guest, which is Geoff Houston. Good morning to Mr. Nagaraj from IPv6, the numero uno company, Reliance Jio, to Mr. Prasanna Gokhale from ACT, and all the other distinguished panelists who are going to contribute to the discussions and deliberations today. My pleasant task is to say nothing. It is just to say a few words of introduction and not get into any substantive issues, because I'm anyway not qualified to do that. So I will not come between you and the learned speakers who will take you through some aspects of the new IPv6 opportunities and challenges. All I wish to say is, what we have today is, people say it's a hyper-connected world, some say it is super-connected. I would call it a world of devices. Devices are engulfing us everywhere. wearable devices, non-wearable devices, and any device is now connected to the internet. Without our even realizing it, we have many devices, each one of us. And devices no longer mean only a mobile handset. Devices mean many more things, whether it is iPad or laptop or a remote or a sensor. We have got an enormous explosion in the number of devices, short-range devices. And some of you might be a little surprised to learn that in a very important research exercise recently, some of the experts discussed and deliberated and came upon a figure of at least 10 devices per person in India before 2025. And that's a humongous number. That means you're going to have in India itself more than maybe about 7 billion devices. So that tells you what's happening in the world. And if that's the state of the game, and 7 billion devices, can you imagine connected on IPv4? IPv4 being 32-bit, the capacity is only 2 by 2 power 32. And as you all know, the theoretical limit is also not achieved. It's probably slightly below 4 billion. So that is not going to do. And therefore, we have IPv6, which has been on the cards for some time, and the world is adopting it, India is adopting it, and everybody is completely dedicated to that. This 128-bit thing is gone. The number is so huge, I don't know, I can't even get a feel of that. The experts will tell you. They talk in terms of sextillion and more, 2 power 128. So that is the one which is going to take care of all our needs of the future, when we are going to have more and more devices, more and more IoT everywhere. Hence, the importance of this seminar, this webinar, what we call digital dialogue in Broadband India Forum. Broadband India Forum is totally committed to anything concerning the internet and the broadband. And we earnestly believe in broadband for all, the government goal. We are committed to that. And hence, this is part of that exercise. With that, I would not like to spend more time on this, but just permit me to say a few words of introduction about not all of the speakers, only some, because firstly, I would like to thank Anupam Agarwal, the Master of Ceremonies. He is the MC for today. He is going to be managing the entire program. Is his dream and initiative. And we are very happy in Broadband India Forum to work with him to make it happen. Anupam will be there as the moderator, as the MC throughout to take care of all your requirements. I would like to say he kicked off the entire thing without any words of introduction. So I would like to say a few words about Anupam. Anupam is a part of the Corporate Industries Forum and Standard Cell in the famous TCS. He manages the Secretariat of ISO subcommittee on software and systems engineering, and convener of the working group on communications and outreach. He is an Chevening Fellow on cybersecurity and chair of India Internet Foundation, which works on technical capacity building and improving trust on internet. He does a tremendous amount of work on these aspects, on the engineering aspects, to build the trust and confidence in the internet. And I would like to also state that he is a very active member of what is emerging now in India in a strong way, the India Internet Governance Forum. So he is an active member in that and contributing to that. So thank you, Anupam, for organizing this initiative, and my salutations to you. I would also now like to welcome my great friend, Mr. Anil Jain. Mr. Anil Jain hardly needs any introduction. He is a veteran of the telecom industry in India, more than 36 years of experience, and I know him for more than 2 decades. He may not know me. I've been watching and following him. He's 36 years of experience in the government in various fields. He has served in DOT, he has served in BSNL, he has served in MTNL, in fields like computerization, etc., E10B switches, technology, marketing, sales, broadband, mobile, next generation technologies, so on. And he's also served for 12 years on the board of National Internet Foundation, Internet Exchange Foundation, NIXI. He's a great recipient of the Prime Minister's Gold Medal for his MBA from MDI. I think I need say no more. We are very, very fortunate to have him also today here with us. And I very warmly welcome him. And I would also like to add that he is one of the lead stars of the India Internet Governance Forum that is being set up. He is the chairman of the coordination committee of IIGF and making IIGF 21 happen. So we are all very much obliged to him. Thank you, sir, for joining. It's very appropriate that you're going to be saying a few words, not only in your capacity as CEO of NIXI, but also as chairman of IIGF Coordination Committee. So I very warmly welcome you for that. And I would like to say more, but I think I will not stand between you and Mr. Jain. After that, I will talk a little bit more. But over to you, Mr. Jain. Please give us the benefit of your initial remarks. Can't hear you. Audio.
Thank you, TV Ramachandran sir. And we always, I think most of us call him sir because he's the doyen of broadband, internet, and telecom in the country. So you have not introduced yourself, but you are omnipresent in all telecom and broadband and internet, and your contribution is immense, which nobody can forget. So, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. Mr. Jaff, the representative from Broadband India Forum, guest, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. And first of all, I would like to thank the Broadband India Forum to invite me and give me this opportunity to share a few words with all of you. First of all, today or this year is a very important year for the broadband in the country because we are celebrating 25 years of broadband in the country, and which is a very auspicious year for all of us. And we know that we started computerization somewhere in 1986-87 when Rajiv Gandhi introduced the desktop and the laptop to the country, and at that time we were wondering that how the whole internet, how the computerization will come. And then the second milestone which I remember is 1995-96 when the first internet connection was given by Videsh Sanchar Nigam Limited. Although before that there were some experiment and scientific work going on internet through ARNet some time back, but the commercial feel of internet comes in 2000-2001 when telecom service providers started providing internet to the masses of this country. And since then there is no look back on the speed. And I remember that in 2000 we were giving internet at a speed of 64 kbps, 128 kbps, and now we don't think about those speeds. If we don't get in 10 megabyte, 15 megabyte, we immediately dial the internet service provider and find out what happened to us. In 2015, Honorable Prime Minister has launched a very ambitious plan which is called Digital India, and this year he has given a call for Atmanirbhar. I think these all aspects and all factors are dominating and taking India to the next level. Now, what we actually want to see, we want to see not only the people in Delhi, Mumbai, and metros enjoy the benefit of internet and broadband independently. The country want to see that last person who is sitting in the village should be able to utilize the facilities of internet scientist has given us internet and all the new applications which are getting developed around us. So Nixie is internet infrastructure provider to the country, and we are now planning to build up the internet superhighway in the country, and with the dream that a person who is sitting, say, in a remote village in Bihar should be able to telemedicine facility, should be able to utilize the educational content of IIT Delhi and IIT Mumbai sitting at in the village at home. And once we are able to do that, believe me, ladies and gentlemen, the whole GDP will grow, the society will grow, and as the nation will claim that yes, we are contributing a big thing to the society. This particular webinar of IPv6 implementation is very close to my heart, because we in Nixie are the people, we are the National Internet Registry for Internet Protocol addresses, and we are providing IPv4 and IPv6 in the country. First of all, I would like to congratulate all of us, because India is the number one country in the world in IPv6 adoption. And it is the figure says that around 72% of the India devices are IPv6 enabled, and we are growing. And this is a moment where we can all celebrate. I want to tell you that Nixie as a NIR, which started in 2013, we have already delegated around 9.3 billion IPv6 addresses to the country. And of course, IPv4 are now going out, but still people love to go for IPv4. And I'll also take 1 minute why people are still clamoring for going for IPv4. We have delegated right now around 11.5 million IPv4 addresses in the country. And I am very proud to say that India is the fastest growing NIR in Asia Pacific region. Means that we are much more than the IP addresses in this particular region. So this tells you about the interest the society is generating, the enterprise are generating, individuals are generating. As TV has already said that IPv4 is now giving way to IPv6, and the reason is very clear, because we don't have IPv4 available with, and IPv6 are numerous. And again, the TV was talking about the sextillion IPv6. I think it is 340, but I always call in a very common word. The send particles, if you can cover, this is what IPv6 are available. So we believe that the whole world globe should be able to use IPv6 for another 40 to 50 years without any problem. So this is what is there. And IPv6, because it is a new protocol, definitely the new systems have been developed, and IPv6 is very secure internet protocol addresses, and security is the main concern across the world. We must have seen that recently. uh, Facebook was down, WhatsApp was down for a long period, and huge amount of money has been lost, and I don't know, whole the communication was off. So security is a major concern, and IPv6 is highly secure, highly reliable protocol. So on behalf of Nixie, on behalf of Government of India, would like to uh, advise. We would like to inform, and I would like to appeal to all of you to, now whoever is going, they should go for IPv6, and the trend is really really good. The problem is that why people are still going for IPv6, because what they search websites, they search the search engines, they search the information, and unfortunately, uh, to my understanding, around 65% of the websites are still IPv4. So if the information giver is IPv4, it is very difficult for the information seeker to have IPv6 unless and until there is a dual stack available with the telecom service provider or with the person who is actually using and seeking this information. And all these things are very, very costly. And believe me, if you have to convert IPv4 to IPv6, this is a not only time consuming, it is not only technology consuming, but I think it is costly affair also. So my appeal is that we should go for IPv6 alone. Now let me also brief 2 or 3 initiatives which Nixie has taken to promote IPv6 in the country. First thing is that we have started a program called Nixie Academy, where we are providing the audio visuals and tutorial classes on IPv6, for example, IPv6 fundamentals, IPv6 advanced courses, IPv6 security. And these are available virtually free of cost. Only 100 rupees are required to register yourself, and then you can enjoy the services absolutely free of cost. And ultimately, the person who goes for this, all the 10 chapters or 12 chapter of course, they will get a certificate, and it is also good for the people to get employment in the market. So this is one step. We are adding the DNS security, advanced security features in Nixie Academy. The second thing which we have started is Nixie Index, IPv6 Index. So basically, we are comparing on this particular website the performance of various countries in adoption of IPv6. So there you can see how much India has adopted, how much Australia has adopted, how much US has adopted, how much Brazil has adopted. Within India, we also give the information about which operator with the ASN number, how much IPv6 adoption has done. So that what is the status of Reliance, Geo, what is the status of BSNL, what is the status of Airtel, and all those things, so that people get motivated that my neighbor has adopted IPv6 to that level, why not me? So this is acting as a motivating factor. Third thing we have started is IPv Guru. As I said, that people are not aware, they are afraid how to adopt IPv6. So we are providing the technical guidance, we are providing the commercial guidance, we are providing the financial guidance through IPv Guru. In IPv Guru, we have taken the experts from national and international level, and IPv Guru is absolutely free. Again, you visit our website, put your question mark over IPv Guru, team will contact all of you, the concerned person, handhold them until they implement IPv6 properly. So these are few things which we have started. And one good news which I want to tell the audience, that if you have both IPv4 and IPv6, then we are providing IPv6 addresses absolutely free of cost to most of you. In case you are purchasing only IPv6, then definitely you have to pay. But if you are purchasing both IPv4 and IPv6, then we make the least one as free, and most of the people in India today are taking IPv6 free. These are small contributions which Nixie is providing to the nation, and we hope that the whole country should be proud and should generate more and more traffic on IPv6, and we are on the job, and Nixie is committed to convert most of the websites on from IPv4 to IPv6. We have started a drive starting from the government websites to get converted into IPv6, and then we will motivate the other websites also. We will convince them so that they adopt IPv6, and then the whole ecosystem will be on IPv6, and it will be IPv6 enabled. So with these few words, because I don't want to delay the whole webinar also, again, thank you very much for BIF for giving me this opportunity and sharing my thoughts and information to the learned speakers and audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jain. I think it was wonderful, as usual, to hear from you on the brilliant initiatives you're taking from Nixie for progressing on internet and IPv6 fields. and the actions being taken on cyber trust, so many affordable initiatives are being launched by you. Thanks very much for these brilliant opening remarks. And I cannot thank you enough for squeezing time from your extremely packed schedule. I personally am aware of how it is going with the IIGF coming up and all the pressures on you. So thank you for sparing the time for joining us today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
my great pleasant duty now is to proceed to the next speaker on the program. And before that, that will be Mr. Jeff Houston. But before that, I wish to first welcome also again my great friend, Amrita Chaudhary, who is here. She will be the person who will introduce Jeff Houston. I think that would be more appropriate and more comprehensive coming from her. But let me have the privilege of introducing Amrita. Amrita is, to put it in few words, Madam Civil Society of India. She has been the internet face ever since I know, for more than 2 decades. As founder and director of CCAOI, almost everybody has used the internet through that in those days. And she's a very active member and contributor at all national, regional, and global internet governance platforms. She serves, importantly, as a UN IGF member, multi-stakeholder group of the Internet Governance Forum of the UN. So that is a great distinction she has brought to India by serving that. She's also vice chair of the Asia-Pac regional IGF committees and member at ICANN, president of Internet Society of India, and much more, many more. She's a founding member of INSIG. I could go on and on. There are so many things she does in connection to the internet that I think it'll take me an hour to go through all that. But I would like to say that we are deeply obliged to Amrita for her deep commitment to the cause of the internet. She represents the face of the community of users, and no better face than that. And she is completely dedicated to doing anything required in this area. And hence, she has been very closely involved also in today's event. And I must thank her, actually, for helping us to contact Jeff and avail of his expertise today as the lead speaker. He is the superstar of the day. Thank you very much once again, Jeff, for coming a long way to join us on this. And we hope to see you soon physically also. I would now like to hand over to Amrita to introduce Jeff Houston. But before that, since I will not be having the opportunity again later, I just want to also specially thank the other speakers, Mr. Prasanna Gokhale and Mr. Nagaraj also, who will be following Jeff Houston. They are mighty stalwarts in this area. And most of all, to our chief guest, Madam Deepa Tyagi, who also is somebody I know well for the last 25 years and a fantastic person in terms of knowledge and commitment and service to the cause of internet and telecom in India. So with these few words, I would like to hand over to Amrita and wish you all a very good and interesting time. Over to you, Amrita.
Thank you, TV sir. As TV sir mentioned, let me introduce you. If you are not aware of him, I'm sure you are. Jeff Houston, who is the chief scientist from EPNIC. He's widely regarded as one of the preeminent researchers on IPv4 exhaustion. He's been routinely referenced by international agencies and frequently quoted by the ICT media. Geoff has also presented at a number of global technical and government forums, such as the OECD, ITU, ICANN, APEC, IETF. And in 2020, Geoff was made a member in the General Division of the Order of Australia for his role as an internet pioneer in Australia. As in, this is a very short view which I am sharing of Geoff. There is many more, but I would not stand between Geoff and what he wants to share. So over to you, Geoff.
Look, thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you, TV, and thank you indeed, Amrita. It's a pleasure to be here. As I share my screen, let me just note that my job as chief scientist is to be curious. It's as simple as that. And to ask the question that is actually almost one of the most difficult questions to ask. And that is, why? So hopefully you can now see this screen. And what I want to talk about is to lift up our view and to actually talk about where we are today in this sort of V4, V6 world. What does it mean? And where might we head? And what are the choices? That's a lot in 30 minutes. So let's move right on. I work in, and you do too, in an industry that has a very rich history. The telephone was first introduced to the world in the International Exposition of 1876 and led the first boom in telephone handsets, as it was way back then. But in that rich history, we've made some hideously bad guesses. You know, ISDN was a mistake, and so was ATM. And some of the things that turned out being enormously popular, the SMS service for mobile phones, and even IP, was never dreamt of by the telephone companies. They just got it wrong. It took them by surprise. And, you know, the internet is perhaps the biggest surprise of the lot, an absolute runaway success. And it's transformed not just our industry, not just bits and bytes on the wire, but it's changing our world in so many ways. That outage of Facebook affected 3 billion people. We've never had an outage that bad or that big if you're simply counting the number of people that were impacted. So this is a big change. And of course, as you've already heard, you know, the internet, when we started with this back in the 1980s, we thought this was going to be really cool and it could last for an enormously long time, but the 32-bit address space we were using wasn't big enough. And that's not news. I mean, oddly enough, we knew about this 30 years ago. Here's an old slide set, and it wasn't digital. It was actually the old overhead projectors. And it goes back to some proceedings from August 1990. And there's one slide here I just wanted to bring up in amongst all of this, handwritten, by the way, because, you know, computers weren't good enough. And at the time, Frank Solinsky was reporting that we just had 4 years, just 4 years. And it's kind of the big oops moment. We had to do something really, really quickly. So we very quickly in the IETF decided we needed to do something ultra fast. And so what we did was actually change the way addresses worked. And we introduced classless addressing rather than the old classful. And oddly enough, this classless interdomain routing, what we call CIDR, had an immediate impact. We introduced it in 1994, and immediately the trajectory of consumption, the red line, changed to the blue line. We bought time, which was great. And we did something else back in 1992. We couldn't persist with a 32-bit address space. We had to do something. So we started working on a new internet protocol. And we had a beauty parade of all the various contenders of how to do this. And we chose one by 1994, and it was IPv6. And we didn't worry too much about this because we left this task of transition until we'd actually figured out the details of IPv6. So what happened then? Well, oddly enough, nothing. Nothing. Because it didn't look to be an urgent problem anymore. You see, not only did we introduce classless interdomain routing, but we also introduced the concept of regional internet registries and introduced this new conservatism in the way we handed out IP addresses. Previously, we just didn't care. And, you know, you'd be lucky to use even 5% of the address pools that you got allocated, and no one seemed to mind. But when we introduced conservatism through the RARs, we were asking people to use up to, and indeed more, than 80% of their addresses before they got any more. And that caused a massive change. And so we didn't need to deploy V6 in the next 2 years. We didn't need to get it done by 94. And indeed, even by the year 2000, we thought we had decades. So V6 was there, just in case, but it wasn't urgent. But, you know, the internet kind of continued in its inexorable rise because we had the great internet boom of 2000, which wasn't really a boom at all. But what was a boom was changing from modems to DSL and changing the internet from an enthusiast to consumers, from esoteric things to everyone had a computer, the computer as a consumer device. And then in around 2007, along came the smartphone. And we took an entirely new trajectory with mobiles. And all of a sudden, it wasn't going to last for decades anymore. And in fact, by 2011, it was all over. The central pool just died. We weren't expecting it. We honestly thought we had another couple of decades. This thing just caught us unaware. And that was a rude awakening. So all of a sudden, V6 became really, really important. But as I said right at the start, this is an industry that gets it wrong more often than it gets it right, and gets taken by surprise more often than it deliberately creates technology. So when we look at this transition to V4 to V6, it's useful to ask that question. Why? Is it going to work? How is it going to work? What's going on? Now, one view is, oh, Jeff, don't ask this question. It's automatic. Surely this is just going to happen. We just have to wait for the pressure of V4 address exhaustion to get to sufficient levels of intensity. Currently, the market price for IPv4 addresses is somewhere between US dollars around $15 to $18 per address. As soon as it hits $1,000 per address, no one's going to afford it anymore. V6 will just be automatic. So why are you worried about this, Jeff? You shouldn't be. But maybe being curious might be interesting. Maybe we should look at this situation a little bit more. Now, sometimes these technology transitions are completely inevitable, and we never really needed to worry about it. When we first built the telephone network, everyone had their own wire. And many cities, and this is downtown New York in about 1905, just put up a whole heap of cables in the air. And, you know, the real problem was the poles weren't strong enough. And particularly in New York, when it snowed, and it did a few times, all the poles would fall down. That was the problem. It was expensive, difficult, didn't scale. So what did we do? We employed technology. Firstly, frequency division multiplexing, and then time division multiplexing. And so we could put multiple phone calls on one wire. Things became cheaper. And then we did another transition from circuits to packets, and things became cheaper. So every time, the cost efficiencies of the new technology simply pushed the old one out of the way. We never had to worry about how to make it happen. The market drove it because it was cheaper. And that's a natural kind of driver. So in taking that view on the inevitability through economic forces, now let's look at the whole V4, V6 thing, because we need to get from a V4 only network, which is largely the case back in 2005, to at some point, it's all going to be V6, isn't it? So the real question is, how do we bridge that air gap? How do we make that transition? Because that is at the heart of the problem. Now, there was a flag day in the internet. There really was, in 1981. And you know, the 100-odd computers at the time in the US research network all changed from running NCP to TCP. Yay. And so let's do it again. Let's have a flag day when, you know, we all turn off V4 and turn on V6 everywhere, all at the same time, all in the same 24 hours. The outage will be bigger than Facebook's, no doubt about it. And you know, it will last for months, and we're never going to do this. We're just too big. Flag days don't work anymore. They just don't. I'm sorry. So that option's a bad one. So we go to the next option, this parallel transition. You see, the problem is that V6 is not backward compatible to V4. They're a different language, a completely different language. And so the folk who speak V4 only speak V6 if they have another protocol stack inside the platform. You can't have some magic device out there somewhere else in the net to translate this automatically without you worrying. Can't do that. So we have to do a transition on every device all the time. Now, we had a really good theory. I think I even chaired a working group on this back in the IETF in, geez, 94 or something. The theory of transition, that as the internet grew, the green line, we'd all start to do more and more V6, the red line. And by the time V4 got close to running out, but not running out, we'd have V6 everywhere. At that point, who cared what happened to V4? Because we're all running V6, it didn't matter. Start early, finish early, no problem. Oops. Because, you know, they didn't, we didn't. We ran out of V4 in the central pools when the amount of V6 out there was fractions of a %. So we've got down to the last V4 addresses, and now we're trading. Now we're pricing it. And part of the problem was that maybe we should have priced it earlier. Because if this market is driven by economics, the RIRs, while they were conservative, also kept the price low. There was no scarcity signals. And without scarcity signals, the market just said, what's the problem? It's the same price as it was yesterday. I don't need to change. Why should I spend money doing V6? I'll delay. And so you did, and delayed, and delayed. And now it's all too late. Oops. And because it's too late, we started getting inventive. And everybody on the planet now, everybody is sitting behind some kind of carrier grade NAT. And they're probably sitting behind some level of application gateway as well, HTTPS proxies and similar. And indeed, there's an awful lot of both going on, and even content distribution networks, because we can't uniquely number everything in V4. We just can't, and we won't. And the way we get around this is to actually share those addresses using network address translation technologies. This is today's internet, start to finish. And so oddly enough, this is not a clear transition anymore. To get from here to there, we're actually in a tight little loop somewhere else, doing a transition set of technologies. We're doing middleware in the network. Everybody's doing this, and everyone's spending money on it. Everyone's getting good at it. Everyone's training their techs in this. This is where the effort is going. And so oddly enough, we're getting really good at it because, you know, we're professionals. We're getting so good, we're locked into it. We're getting so good, we're reluctant to walk away from it. We've invested so much in this kind of transitional technology, we've forgotten we have to junk it. And we're not. We're stuck there. And we're actually extending this indefinitely. Nobody in 2005 ever thought that by 2021, 10 years after IANA ran out, nobody thought that the network would be 2/3 V4. It should have been 0 V4. But oddly enough, it hasn't happened because we've got really good at transition. Now, the problem is that there aren't any more v4 addresses, and those that are getting more and more expensive. And we don't have sufficient v6 out there for folk to feel brave enough to do v6 only. Everyone, and even some of the leading deployments like Reliance Jio, still has v4 in the background, because those v4 only sites still need to be accessible. And so you can't junk it. And so this is surprisingly, oddly enough, bad as it sounds, it's working. It's working for the entire user base of the internet. So far. And so the risk is, of course, that getting good at transition might take us somewhere else. We might forget about v6, because after all, it truly is a 1980s technology, and actually go to different technologies rather than v6. So let's just have a look at some of the numbers here to try and work out where we are and the pressures are and where to change. This is the percentage of users in the world who can get to a v6 only site. If you're a service provider, you should be studying this like crazy, because if you ever think you can go v6 only 28% of the world could get to you. The other 72% couldn't reach you. Now, the other thing about this graph is that it's growing so slowly. That's 7 years. And although we've got from, nothing to 28%, the other 72% haven't. There's no sense of urgency. Somehow, the entire network, the world, doesn't seem to think this is a problem that they need to solve today. So let's look at the world and color it. Red, doing nothing. Green, doing a whole lot. And the bits in between, kind of there. And to help you a little bit, let's look at the 20 largest countries by population of user. How many users in China? 836 million, according to the ITUT. How many users in India? A still astonishing 616 million. These are big numbers. But look at that third column. India, 75% of those 616 million users can get to a v6 only site. Amazing. But what's also amazing is that that number stands alone. The next two largest are the United States at 49% and Germany at 51%. And coming up just behind that, Vietnam and France. How's India managed to be head and shoulders above everyone else? And why is Indonesia, 123 million users, done nothing? Turkey, nothing. Nigeria, nothing. Oh, these are rich countries. I don't think that these are rich or poor. GDP doesn't come into this, and certainly not GDP per capita. And so whatever signaling is going on in this industry, it's not coherent. We're all doing it differently, and we're feeling the pressure differently. And so you kind of ask, what's the problem? Why is this not working the way we'd planned? I'm like, are we lacking v6 in our platforms? No. No matter where you look, if you're still running Windows, bless you. Love you. If you're still running Windows, it has v6. If you're running macOS, it has v6. iOS, Android, all the Unix variants. Yes, v6 is everywhere. v6 is everywhere at the edge. What about every access ISP? Well, clearly, if you're in India, probably yes. If you're in Indonesia, probably no. And across the world, well, no, not every access ISP supports v6. That's a problem. And what about services? Does Slack support v6? And I think the answer is, well, only recently. Git, well, only a day or two ago. Facebook, yes. Google, yes. But, others, well, no. So every service provider actually doesn't support v6 all the time. So 1 out of 3, not good enough. And part of the sort of question is, why? Because why don't people do this? Now, if someone who's bought up v6, and turned it on, you'll realize it is more complex. Running 2 protocols at once does create some real issues in the service. And, some folk incorrectly think that dual stack is slower and less reliable. Oddly enough, dual stack is more reliable, but they just don't seem to grok it. But more to the point, I think, we've grown used to NATs. We're comfortable with NATs. We just don't care about V6 anymore. We don't think there's an urgent problem to solve. And that's almost the key here. And I think behind this is the law of economics. Now, as this cartoon says, economists are not the most intelligent of folks sometimes. And, you know, when practice and theory don't work, they just insist the theory is right and keep waiting for the practice to conform. But the whole issue is in trying to expect V6 to actually get deployed, somebody needs to spend money. And normally if you spend money, you expect a benefit. But in many cases, V6 represents a dislocation. The folk who have to spend the money to do this service, particularly the access ISPs, spend the money, but the gain is elsewhere. The gain is over in the servers and the services and not necessarily in the access market. And when you get that dislocation of expenditure and benefit, in the market economic terms, everything just stops. And the only way you can get around this is to call this a failure, a failed market, and actually talk about regulatory intervention. Difficult as it is for many regulators and national economies to move in. Difficult because the internet is largely a private sector investment. And so we're in, I suppose, the most challenging of times because there's just massive uncertainty out there, even today, even after 10 years of trying to get this transition underway. 20 years, if I'm going to be, true to myself. And all of those questions are the questions folk ask themselves. Are we ready? What are we doing? How long will this take? What's going to break? How much is it going to cost? Should I do it? Where's it going? Where's all this heading? Now, the optimist would say, look, Jeff, you're just impatient, get over it. We've taken our time, but within the next 10 years, it'll just happen. People will feel confident, V4 will decay because sooner or later the price will get to $1,000 address. Nobody will have a problem in V6 by then. And I admit that's possible. But maybe there's a different view. Maybe address space doesn't matter anymore. Maybe we're building a different kind of network. Maybe folk don't feel the urgency because folk are going down a different path. And if it's a different path we're going down, we actually don't know. It's not clear whether we still need a uniquely addressed internet, where clearly we don't have it today. Approximately 40 billion devices fit inside a V4 address space where we're only using 2 billion addresses. We've achieved the impossible already. Why should we go back to uniquely numbering all of those 40 billion, 100 billion, 1 trillion devices that we're going to build? Maybe we're heading down a different path. And maybe it's not up to us. Maybe, as in the last 30 years of internet development, this is actually about the market. It's not about a conscious decision by you or I or anyone else. This is all about investment economics and market forces. You see, there is an alternate view of where we are today. And that alternate view is almost shocking. The internet is over. The internet as we knew it is finished. Because quite frankly, packets don't go from edge to edge. I'm not sending my packets to you. I'm actually sending it to a Zoom data center, probably in Sydney, Australia. And after that, some Google Cloud or Amazon Cloud or Microsoft Cloud moves it over a protocol that isn't the internet, to a data center located somewhere on the Indian subcontinent. And they will then fan it back out through access networks to you. And that is the majority of the traffic on the internet today. We don't do end-to-end. Transit's gone, it's over. The entire internet by traffic volume is all around content data networks. The internet now, the IP bits, is just a collection of last mile access networks. It's not a common technology, and we don't need universal addressing. That's all over. Unconsciously, in our search for speed, incredible speed, for incredible scaling, for incredible cheapness, we've stumbled on a different kind of network, a post-internet network, where content, computation, and storage and comms are now abundant. We've got so much of it on this world. We're putting in 300 terabit cables on the subsea. We now have so much capacity. We're now able to build a massively over-engineered network where your content and my content is replicated in hundreds of points of presence, in literally hundreds, thousands of data centers all over the world. Because we live in a world of abundance, not in the old telco world of rationed scarcity. And in a world of abundance, it's not clear we need 128 bits of unique addresses. Maybe all we really need is a common namespace. And, you know, we didn't think it at the time. We really didn't have this thought. But maybe today's internet is actually all about the DNS. That's the glue that holds us all together. And, you know, why were we so keen about V6 if this is the world we're building? What was behind our motivation? So if we unpack the technology and say, why did we think it was important? I think there are two words that V6 encapsulated for all of us: open and accessible. Anyone could build it. Anyone could compete. It wasn't that I had to buy it from, well, at the time, Cisco or Microsoft. They weren't the only providers. Anyone could have a good idea and compete. That's what we wanted. We wanted continued innovation and market pressure. So let's think about that as the goal. How do we achieve that? How do we manage a period of transition? And we are in one. Whatever we're going to, whether it's content data networks and named networking or V6, there's a period of transition. But how do we maintain a focus on innovation and openness and resist the urge to give it all over to the big five, the Googles, Amazons, Facebooks, Microsofts of this world? How do we make sure that we can innovate, be open, and be flexible inside all of this transition, and don't get trapped into a new round of monopolies, which were as bad as, or maybe a lot worse than the old telcos of the last century? Now, how can we avoid making it any worse and actually keep down this track? How do we do that? I wish I knew. And that's why that slide is blank. I don't know what's going to work. I really don't. And as far as I can see, looking out there to regulators, looking out there to investors, looking at what Google has in their mind, if it even has one, I don't think anyone else has a clue either. None of us know. They all think self-interest is going to serve us all, and self-interest won't do that. No one knows how to do this. But even though I don't have an answer and don't even pretend to, I'd like to close with offering you just three thoughts that I think we should bear in mind when we think about the future internet and the role of V6 and the role of innovation and the role of where we're going. One, keep an eye on the larger picture. Think about what's in all of our interests, not just my interest or your interest. Because if we're all working to a single coherent digital environment where everyone can access a digital environment that works for them, bigger, faster, better, cheaper, where all of us can play a role in that, we've won, we're winning, this is working. So keep an eye on the big picture. It's not just V6, it's an open, accessible, flexible, dynamic network, a digital environment that makes it better, cheaper, more accessible for all 7.7 billion of us. Think about that. It's our common interest. Secondly, don't perfect yesterday. It's over. It's not about trying to make a 1980s technology better. It's about trying to make the digital environment faster, better, cheaper. So all of this effort, which currently the world is actually focusing not on the packets, but on applications and services. And if it's all about content distribution networks and replicated services, then fine, because the result is still, it scales like crazy. It's bigger. It's really fast. The network of today, as you're probably aware, is, unbelievably fast compared to our dim memories of slow modems and pushing packets around the world. And bigger, faster, better. Whatever it takes is where we should be. So don't be, oh, it's got to be this technology. It's got to have these properties. So it's not about making yesterday's technology good. It's actually about making this digital environment sing and dance what we used to think were impossible things. Make it possible, make it work. And last of all, bring it on. Just make it happen. Don't resist innovation. Let it flower. Because by resisting innovation, we're just taking today's incumbents, the Googles, the Amazons, the Facebooks, the Microsofts of this world, and making their position almost impossible to unseat. We'll recreate those stifling, vertically bundled carriage monopolies that the internet found so hard to deal with. And we're going to do it again if we resist innovation. So bring it on, because if we don't, we will have lost it all. So hopefully that's given you something to think about over the next half hour or so. Because as I said, the real question here is to be curious and ask why. Why is India so far ahead of everyone else? What's going on in this industry? And why is this urgency everywhere? What other thoughts are people having? And what are we in common trying to achieve? Thank you very much. I will hand it back with that thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Geoff. That was amazing. Actually, as even for people who are not technical as I am, and especially the candid conversation and the three main practical takeaways, as you say, at the end. So there may be questions, they would come at the end, but if anyone has any questions, they can put it in chat and you may want to look at it. And I'll go to the next speaker who I would like to introduce, and that is Mr. Prasanna Gokhale. He is the Chief Technology Officer from ACT. He's an electronics and communication graduate from NITK Surathkal, and he has over 27 years of experience in the industry. He's worked with Tata Elxsi for 14 years in networking, research and development, and he's been a successful entrepreneur. He started a 4G LTE small cell research and development company, which later got acquired. And he has been the CTO of ACT for the last 8 years. Mr. Gokhale, I may have missed out a few points, but I wanted to keep it crisp, and it's over to you for your perspective.
Thank you very much, Amrita. Thanks a lot for the nice introduction. Without wasting much time, I'll just have a few slides I will like to share and talk about it. 1 second. Kindly, if somebody can just
yeah.
Thank you very much. A very good morning to all, and thank you very much for the Broadband India Forum to have organized the interesting discussion on this very important topic. And it is a very relevant topic across the industry in the networking domain for several years now. And what I would like to touch upon here is ISP's perspective in terms of the opportunities and the challenges for adoption of IPv6, how the journey has been so far, what are the opportunities we have seen, what are the challenges we have seen as well. And this is, and the perspective is limited to ISP because my next speaker will also give a good perspective from the mobile side of perspective in terms of the opportunities and challenges that have been seen. Quickly jumping on, with respect to the broad opportunities that we've seen in IPv6, we have seen IPv6, the advent of IPv6 and the need for IPv6 started from a need for scalability in terms of number of IP addresses. And but while doing that, the other aspects with respect to the robust security, the user experience, and all of that have been built into the IPv6. With respect to scalability, I think enough has been spoken on this. We have a current IPv4, which is 4-byte headers, And now we have seen, and Mr. TVR spoke about it, it's a world of devices and 10 devices per person, etc., etc. So the number of connected devices in the world is going to be humongous, right? And with the advent of IoT, with the advent of connected devices, and with the advent of multiple devices per person, so I think there is definitely a need for more number of devices to be connected in the world, and IPv6 was originally thought will be a solution to address these problems, right? So scalability is one problem that that is an opportunity for IPv6 adoption. Robust security is another big area, and IPv6, I think, intrinsically builds a lot of security options. One of them, for example, is the identity obfuscation, right? So where in case of IPv6, there's the option of the devices self-generate pseudo-random IP addresses, and many of the pseudo-random IP addresses use their unique MAC addresses inbuilt to actually generate that IP addresses. So, and the random IP addresses are frequently changing. So from that perspective, it becomes very, very hard to actually, for any of the malicious content to, or the malicious hackers, etc., to actually get to a particular device which is on IPv6 and cause any kind of a security risk. In addition, there are intrinsic security measures. Encryption and authentication has been built through extension headers here, and there's a very large address space, right? So it's very difficult to even scan that large address space, and so the botnet proliferation will get controlled, and it has been very beautifully described in RFC 7721 as well. I think these are some of the inbuilt and intrinsic security that IPv6 brings to the table. And because as we've seen, with the implosion of internet usage, with the implosion of smart connected devices, we have also seen the darker side of the internet in terms of malice, in terms of the security risk, in terms of the attacks, and all of those also have actually increased significantly in the last few years. So it is very important whenever we build the networks for the future, it's very important to make sure that the security aspects need to be more and more robust as time goes by. The third option is the ease of operations, and IPv6 provides a beautiful way of auto configuration and administration in terms of it's through a Slack or a stateless DHCP-v6. So most of the v6 configurations, the link local configurations, router solicitation, etc., happens automatically. From a service provider perspective, once the entire transition to IPv6 happens, I think there's the elimination of the carrier grade NAT is itself a big aspect which will ease the operations of many of the operators. And obviously when the carrier grade NAT goes away, then there will be no need for logging in terms of what we do today with respect to the NAT logs. The third aspect is the superior user experience, better packet processing, and advanced routing support, right? So better packet processing, the IPv6 has been designed with a very good, very simple header, aligned at 64 bits, which the ASICs and the network processors are able to process it fast at a line rate very seamlessly. The advanced routing support through optional headers, though many of the application builders don't use this option effectively today, but those aspects have been built into IPv6 to give a very, very superior routing experience for packets traversing through the network, and it avoids unnecessary NAT traversal, right? So because with NAT, with a 4.4 NAT being implemented, the huge amount of NAT traversal that happens today in the network, which can get avoided, right? Let me come to the challenges of IPv6, right? So we as an ISP, we have been at implementing IPv6 for a few years now, and then we have also seen various challenges and how some challenges have been overcome, some challenges still exist in the ecosystem. And if I categorize the challenges in three categories, right? There's one category called the customer premise equipment, right? Because when we talk of a broadband connection at a home, the customer premise equipment becomes very important, because all the other devices in the home sit behind this particular CPE device, right? So this problem might not be very relevant to the to the mobile networks where such a constraint is not there. But from an ISP or a broadband provider, CPE becomes a very critical aspect to address these challenges. The second aspect is the service provider network itself, what needs to be done, what are the challenges there. And the third one is the content and the host. So I will talk about each of them in a separate slide, just to give a good perspective, right? So with respect to CPE, I think one of the aspects that we have seen is the customer premise equipments, which the people, and typically these are Wi-Fi, right? So these are Wi-Fi routers to talk about. So these Wi-Fi routers that are available today in India or anywhere else in the world, right? So I think a lot of them don't support IPv6 properly, right? So, and I think it might be an incentive for them, or through a legislation that can be introduced here. I think there is a need for CPE devices to get more evolved. There is a need for a better IPv6 support on the home Wi-Fi routers, because if you go to the market today and pick a Wi-Fi router off the shelf, 9 out of 10 of the Wi-Fi routers will have some or the other problems with respect to IPv6. Right, so either it will not be properly supported, either it will not have support for DHCP-V6 or Slack. Some of them will be buggy, and and a mix and match of some of this, right? And some of the routers don't even provide proper configuration for a native IPv6 or a dual stack. I think there are multitude of challenges, and I think this is one area where progress needs to be made, because from a ISP perspective, the service provider can put in a dual stack, or he can put in the service provider network part of it. But then there will still be some devices which will continue to be a V4 legacy devices, and some of the new devices will come on V6. So still there is a need for a good CPE device which can help both the legacy V4 devices as well as the new V6 devices to seamlessly come through the CPE and then come into the service provider network, right? So that is one area where I think a lot of progress needs to make. With respect to the service provider network, right? So there's one area of the BNG and AAA. I think this used to be issues some few years earlier, but it has taken up quite a bit for the equipment manufacturers to work with service providers to resolve some of these issues. We have seen issues where the BNG, the moment you enable IPv6, the BNG becomes very unstable, it crashes, the CPU goes beyond control. So I think these were all the challenges that we faced initially about 4 or 5 years back. But I think over the years, these have been resolved by most of the service providers and their partners or their OEM partners. So I think this is less of an issue as we speak. The second big area is because both the kind of devices will continue to exist, because consumers will continue to have legacy V4 devices at least for some time until it is obsolete. There is definitely a need of a dual stack, and most of the service providers today have implemented dual stack in their network. But doing dual stack itself is not a solution, right? Because by doing dual stack, you are basically giving a V6 address as well as a V4 address to the CPE device, so that it can. So it does not help in conserving or conserving the V4 addresses, or you still need to have those many V4 addresses for every customer, right? So so dual stack is not a solution, but it is an important step, and it is a mandatory step in the journey towards the transition towards a complete V6. And the third aspect that we have seen is the network address translation. If we have to eventually, this will have to be done when the world moves towards a complete V6 network, where V4 devices as well as the V4 hosts get lesser and lesser and completely go out, and it becomes a V6. And until then, there has to be a address translation, and this is not seamless. We have seen there are multiple issues, and there are lots of ifs and buts. And I think this is one area where the equipment manufacturers need to work closely with the service providers to address some of the issues that are there in the translation related technologies, right? Whether it is NAT 6.4 and etc. And the third aspect is with respect to the content or the hosts, right? So today, if you see, there are about, if you look at all the websites in the world, about 20% of them are on IPv6. I think Mr. Anil Jain mentioned that 65% of the hosts are still on IPv4, right? So this is how it stacks, and that we feel that there needs to be some kind of a urgency here from the content providers, from the hosts who host the different websites to basically keep moving towards this direction. Today it stands at 20%, but some of the most popular sites have made enough progress. If we see the top 1,000 popular sites by traffic, so about 36% of those basically have moved to V6. But then when you look at the entire world and all the websites, it still stands at 20%. So that is one area. So not all content is available on IPv6 even today. There are still many cases where the features that have been implemented on V6 are very limited compared to V4, and then there is no big incentive for the host or the content to move towards V6. So I think I think I've taken my time. I'll just summarize on some of the salient points that I spoke about. Although there is a lot of promise that IPv6 as a technology promises, we are still to see the fruits of IPv6 adoption worldwide. Adoption has accelerated in the last few years, thanks to a lot of work done on the 4G network proliferation and the new devices and the new network that has come into place. But in the area of fixed broadband, it is still very slow. I think somebody asked on the chat window what would be the percentage of IPv6 adoption in the fixed broadband or the wired broadband space. I don't have a number to that. Maybe some of the Apnic guys might know it, but I think it will be somewhere in maybe the around 10% or maybe single digit, I don't know. So I think, but there is a lot of work to be done there. And the primary places where we see challenges is mostly on the CPE side, where because CPE becomes mandatory for a home broadband user. And that is where I think some work needs to be done. Dual stack has been implemented more or less very widely along with CGNATing. And but it still does not get us away from the constraints of IPv4 in terms of the address space availability. And the BNG, AAA, and are more reliable. CPE's reliability still needs to be improved. And last but not the least, very less motivation for the content providers also and the users to adopt IPv6. So I think these were some of the thoughts that I wanted to share, and I'll just complete my a few slides on that. Thank you very much for this great opportunity, Mr. TVR. And
thank you. Excellent.
Excellent, Mr. Gokhale. So very rarely you come across CTOs who start referring RFCs in their talks. So it was a pleasure to hear RFC 7721. So thank you for that. And thanks for your points on the darker side of internet and the security aspects, which are the use cases for IPv6 adoption, and highlighting one of the areas like customer premise equipment where some work needs to be done. So we have taken your thoughts and we will come back to you in the Q&A session. And thanks once again for your time today. It is now my privilege to introduce Mr. B. Nagaraj. He is Senior Executive Vice President in Reliance Jio Infocom. He is a technology competent and customer focused leader with extensive telecom industry experience of 44 years. His experience is equal to my age, perhaps. And he has been in transmission and data networking for all these years. He has been responsible for setting up multiple data networks while he was in DOT, while he was in Reliance Infocom, and now in Reliance Jio. He has been responsible for putting India on IPv6 leadership, which is at the top in the globe now. And through the successful deployment of IPv6 across the Jio network, India has gained a significant position on the IPv6 dashboard. So, Mr. Nagaraj, we look forward to hearing your thoughts on this very important subject. And please enlighten us with your thoughts. The floor is yours, Mr. Nagaraj.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Let me actually present my slide and I'll run through the slide.
We can see your screen.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, but you need to go to the slide deck.
You're able to see your browser.
1 minute, 1 minute.
Yeah.
Now we can see.
So, okay. So I will, because you know that I will actually talk through the
Would you like to
experience.
put it on the PowerPoint
Presentation
mode?
mode? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it is extremely good now. Thank you.
So I will actually run through because the challenges what we had when we are trying to run the network, especially in Geo, when we started only about 5 years back, our journey. In fact, in 2016, we launched and we have just completed 5 years. And of course, okay, we have moved from a position of almost nothing to now one of the leading this over here, but it has not been an easy challenge, easy thing, because you know that entire network in our scenario is actually completely on IP. It's the interfaces are completely on Ethernet. So this actually was not the state when we actually started. And at that time, when 4G was also an evolving technology at that time. So we had a lot of challenges in actually achieving this particular thing. So I'll take through the scenario which we had when in 2015, what was the option available. I still remember going back to APNIC and actually then trying to present our scenario in somewhere in 2010, 2011, when we had acquired the spectrum. And actually I tried to impress upon that. So everybody actually was skeptic actually whether really this can be achieved. So we got very limited IPv4 at that time. And then actually then with that, the level of whatever we can roll out was not possible at that time. So, and second thing was okay, we were an entrant to this. We had to actually make the network usable to the users so that they'll be able to get comfortable to come to our network. It was highly price sensitive geography. India is very, very sensitive over that. And second thing is, you know, it was a mass adoption, which we had to try. The mobile was still actually was not widely used before we actually launched Geo. And the OEMs actually for IPv6 adoption were very, very early stage. So I'll actually take you through what we had gone through in the subsequent slides. And the even content content distribution networks and ISP were in a very early adoption in 2015. It was not much over there. And very interestingly, all the applications, major applications, OSS, BSS, IPN transport, cloud, all these things, whatever we are talking about now today, still is on IPv4 because you know they are more comfortable in writing their application programs on IPv4, and they are actually slightly because IPv6 will be taxing from the address range is concerned, address space is concerned. They were not very enthusiastic in really making an IPv6 adoption. So we had a situation which actually Mr. Prashant also has talked about, where we had a problem in the devices, we had problem in the network, we had problem in the even actually in the contents and actually the applications. And somehow we still actually we had to drive this entire thing to make it successful. So we actually made IPv6 as a mandate. So there is, when we did the technology selection, we actually said that there is no way out. Actually, I'm also IP addresses. Actually, I am the one who actually allocate addresses to the micro users within the organization. I made it as this one where I block, and actually I'll give only IPv4 as a testing for a POC type of environment. But for a production environment, they have to actually go for IPv6. This we mandated. And we actually made, with OEMs, we made a joint development programs. We actually just did not leave it for them. And actually, we actually worked with them to actually make this to be actually developed. So that CPs and this one actually will be as a over a period of years, we'll actually have, I'll show you how much we have achieved in each of the spaces. And then encourage SIM vendors. This was another problem. The SIM actually used to come only with IPv4. And actually to make it IPv4 and IPv6, and then to make completely IPv6, and then whatever SIMs which has come in IPv4 over the year to convert into IPv6, these were all the challenges. And we had to start with dual stack. It was difficult because the one immediately we found was we have got even as a private space, because ultimately dual stack is what we actually like private IPv4s. And then actually we of course we have public IPv6, but wherever the applications actually require IPv4, they'll come to CGNAT, and through the CGNAT, they'll become public IPv4 and go. But then this actually is not very conducive because the private IPv4 space also is limited. So because we had an IP-MPLS network throughout the country, we actually made circle-wise, now actually we have even made sub-circle-wise, so that actually we are able to actually reuse the private IPv4 again and again, and actually able to support this particular thing. And I'll actually just touch upon how we are able to come out. We are trying to come out of this particular situation also. Now, in the case of this one, IPv6 for 4G VoLTE user equipment, we have got 90% to be IPv6 only, and we allocate a /64 for VoLTE. Then for all the network infrastructures like eNode B, small cells, access points, the entire thing is IPv6. The infrastructure, whatever communication which comes, is completely on IPv6. On management platform, all IP devices, switches, and even the front-end video distributions, they may have many of their devices on IPv4, but the one which actually front ends with the customer equipment will be IPv6. So that we'll actually have only IPv6 in the network for all the content usage. Then all the utilities, this was the most tough and but still we actually achieved this. Power systems, surveillance systems, and everything. We made SMPS, access control system, everything into IPv6. This was the success in which actually we could actually achieve the IPv6. Now, what is the current state? We have got dual stack for 4G LTE as well as FTTH. Somebody was asking what is the percentage. The 4G LTE, now we have got about nearly 70% devices which are completely can actually work on IPv6. 30% devices, because there are multiple devices, we keep testing about 600 to 700 devices, because before we actually introduce into the network, we extensively test in our lab environment. And new devices we keep coming, and without those things, we have to actually work with those device vendors to make them into the category which we want, and then actually move. Now what we are trying to do is we have made SIMs over the year that we have actually perfected the technology. Over the year, actually we are making the SIM into an IPv6. This one for all the legacy SIMs. The new SIMs are coming with only IPv6, and for FTTH. I mean, for the 4G LTE, we actually are using XLAT. The XLAT is the one actually which we may have still some applications on IPv4, but when it comes to the network, it will be actually with a CLAT, it will convert into IPv6. So in the network, we'll actually have only IPv6, and actually for the content which our application which it has to receive in the internet, it will go to the CGNAT, and it become NAT64, and actually the IPv4 address will go. And that's how we are trying to actually battle out the private IPv4. We want to completely eliminate the LTE space. FTTH is much more dangerous, because actually the task it was given by Mr. Prashant. It's not so easy to actually change the devices and all. So we are actually trying to keep one device, even for our home users, our front end, like the set-top box and all, that actually we are making into a device which can actually use only the IPv6, and with the help of which we are trying to take FTTH. FTTH is, we are not still achieved that particular thing. We are at around, say, about 38% for FTTH, 62% still we have achieved IPv6, but it is still slow as compared to LTE, where we have achieved almost about 80% IPv6. Dual stack for enterprise services. This is I would like to once again try to, because the entire services we can say LTE or 4G or 5G, FTTH for the home users, and then enterprise services. The enterprise service is the most laggard service because they are not the LAN WAN. All for the enterprise is still on IPv4, and they are comfortable in that. And they don't have a driver to actually change it. So actually, they demand IPv4 to be actually allocated to them because other service providers are giving, you also give me. So otherwise, they'll not actually adopt this particular thing. So enterprise is the much more challenge. The dual stack for OSS, BSS, as I told you, we have got many of this. This one we actually keep a mediation device. To the mediation device, we actually make it into an IPv6 environment. And actually, the entire thing which actually are within that particular OSS or BSS environment, it may be still some legacy applications will be running, and that may require IPv4. But the interaction which actually happens with the devices or the other network element will be completely on IPv6. Core infrastructures, all those things actually we are converting into an IPv6 environment. On the this actually gives, starting from each month, we actually keep this one over here. And how much we actually have got IPv6? We have got 93.81% request actually comes only on IPv6 for the 95% of the data. So actually only 5% data actually we are using for IPv4, but actually otherwise the entire thing we are converting into IPv6. Approximately 50% of the requests actually of these things, because still we connect to the other service providers and this one. Even though we have our requirements of 95%, we are able to actually meet with IPv6, but whatever actually is coming from the other service providers connectivity to us, 50% of them are still on IPv4. This is the other challenge. Now, I actually talked about the XLAT. We had problems in the chipsets. Even though the smart devices are coming, when we actually try to actually do an XLAT, so that XLAT is the one where it will actually have an IPv4 for the application. The device within it, it will still use IPv4, but we actually have a CLAT which converts it into an IPv6 address and sends it across into the network. And in the network, if it's an IPv6, it will directly go. But if it's an IPv4, then we use a CGNAT. But then in the OEM implementation issues, we are working with each of the OEM to actually make it this one here. And actually, then in our EPC SMG gateway, we actually make this one wherever it's actually coming into then we whitelist the devices. So where actually it's already is perfectly okay to work with the XLAT, we actually whitelist the devices and give only IPv6 address. And the one which is still in progress and actually that still we are working with OEM, that we'll actually give it as a dual stack. So we are actually reducing this dual stack, and hopefully in the next 1 year, we'll actually have most of the devices, 90% devices will be actually compatible to XLAT, other than very, very few legacy devices. Somewhere in next year, June, that's our target, we'll completely implement XLAT in the network. So ultimately, still we may have 5 to 10 devices percent that still may fail on VoLTE when we use IPv6, that we are still working with those things, or otherwise we will not whitelist the devices. And these actually will have to continue on a dual stack mechanism. So SIM cards inventory and all IPv4, v6 in the SIM, all these things actually we are actually trying to take care of with the help of this mobility. This one is concerned. Now, actually, I try to actually give different this one over here. For example, I have divided here into home automation, security surveillance, smart metering, building automation, healthcare, and automobiles. And actually, then here, what are the problems which we are facing? I'll try to actually give on the challenges for implementing over here. So we actually give there is still actually requirement of IPv4. We are actually not able to actually this one because the customers rate actually still increasing, and we are trying to actually acquire some of the IPv4 from the public market, and we are actually trying to utilize IPv4 by utilizing the port numbers also. The public V4 actually IPv4 we are actually managed very successfully. So even though today we have got about nearly 420 million mobile customers, and we have got nearly about 13 million FTTH customers, and through our acquisition we have got about 26 million cable customers. everything we are able to actually manage with about maximum 5 million public IPv4. So, and that's a quite significant achievement. And like if you take over here, I had tried to actually give the different categories, the e-commerce and shopping, finance, then actually, of course, actually Mr. Prashant gave overall this one here, but actually we have tried to take in each of the categories, what are the top customers, top sites which are there, and what is this one? If you actually now you see over here in the website, the dual stack and IPv6, where actually it is available and where it is not available. Actually, that this gives a very interesting thing here. But what actually we achieved, even though the majority of the contents actually are still on IPv4, what we did was actually the first thing actually was we took the customer, for example, Google, Facebook, then Microsoft, where there are actually already IPv6. About 80% of our traffic actually goes through this thing. And actually, as Jeff actually mentioned also, that we actually made the content distribution, CDNs we have brought as close to our network as possible. And all our EPC locations, nearly about 50 locations actually have got CDNs housed within the environment. So we actually serve all this traffic within from the same environment. And we have seen 20% of the website which are able to support the IPv6 actually really amounts to about 80 to 85% of the internet traffic today. And that actually happening through the CDN, we are able to actually solve the major problem of the IPv6 routing for the content is concerned. This is the first thing we achieved. Then actually we took actually one by one, like for example, I'll just give one leading bank, SBI, HDFC, they were all on IPv4. When we actually worked with them and actually tried to make IPv6, they actually made IPv6 website. But actually then as Mr. Prashant pointed out, they were actually, the horsepower of the IPv6 server was limited, or actually all the applications were not supported. So the customers started complaining that if they use, I make it completely IPv6 in our network, then the customers started complaining that the services are slow or services are not working, some of the services are really dropping, all these things. So we had to take with each of the content providers, and directly that exercise is still on, to actually make them to realize that they have to go on IPv6. And that is how we actually, majority of the direct customers, banking and other sectors, we are working with them to actually make them to completely IPv6 environment. Of course, from help from this actually this has to continue, because actually if you have to make at least our own Indian websites to be completely on IPv6. So for the, I actually mentioned on this CLAT, RFC 6877. So similarly, MAPT, RFC 7599. This MAPT is one actually which actually is for FTTH home users we are actually using, so that once again the customer may actually have any environment. He may have IPv4 devices for his Wi-Fi and all, but we convert them into with the help of MAPT, and actually then we, with the help of which we will be able to use only IPv6 in our network. That's what we are trying to do. And all the other DHCP, DNS and all, we actually make for example, DNS, we actually give preference to quad queries. That means if the response comes from if our customer offers any DNS resolution, we send him only IPv6 query back, IPv6 only. Then if the customers actually access that particular server and he says it's not available, of course we have got DNS entries, and where actually it's not available, it will directly IPv4 DNS will go. But otherwise, we'll actually send them where there is a dual stack like in Google and all. P6 only IPv6 response. So he'll be encouraged to actually really use only IPv6 for accessing. But again, still, that a lot of challenges actually are there, like in timing and synchronization, then motivation for the enterprise and business services, wider implementation of IPv6 for the control plane. So that we have successfully done for the user plane. That was a great success actually which we could achieve over here. If you actually say that over 93% actually we are actually using only IPv6 in mobility, and more than 60% in FTTH customers. So that actually has come only because we have done the user plane. Management plane actually we actually forced every this one to actually completely convert it to IPv6. There was challenges on SNMP and this and all, but actually we have successfully done for the management plane also. But the control plane is not so easy, because many other things actually that still actually will be on IPv4 that continues to actually as a slow evolving growth. So that's where I just want to say thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I hope it gave an insight of where exactly we are and what we are trying to do. And because just to actually share the customer growth and customer acquisition, it is still increasing. And actually, we have to actually still battle in pushing IPv6 as compared to IPv4. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nagaraj, for giving us the insight on what was happening within Reliance Jio and how you took efforts. So specifically, your idea of working as a joint development program with the manufacturers and ensuring that IPv6 is built in CPs, you have started at the root and tackled the problem at the root. Possibly that is the one way to go ahead. And specifically, you have taken a big bet on IPv6, and since 80%, as you mentioned, of your traffic is Google and Facebook, and that's what is flowing through. So, and what needs to be done with the different CDNs also, that is also a good takeaway. Just to let you know that we do have a very active IETF community in India, and it is a pleasure to see that you RFCs and all are the focus of Reliance Jio, and we hope to see a greater participation in the ITF activities from your organization. So with this, thank you so much for this insightful talk of yours, and we look forward to have some questions for you in our Q&A session. Now it's time to bring in Ms. Deepa Tyagi. She is Senior DDG and Head TEC Department of Telecom, Ministry of Communications. She is an ITS officer of 1983 batch and is having 35 years of rich experience in the fields of mobile communications, fixed broadband networks, and setting of telecom standards. And she was the one who was responsible for the conception, design, development, and implementation of data communication networks in the BharatNet project. BharatNet project is one of the projects for which, as Indians, all of us can be proud of. She has earlier served as DDG of Future Networks in TEC, where she steered 2 ITU national working groups on QoS and QoE, which are very essential elements if you look in the IoT perspective. And she has further worked on multimedia and AI for health. The AI for health is something which we all have understood in the context of recent pandemic, and she has also worked as head of NTI PRIT, which is the academy under DOT for on telecommunications. So, Madam, welcome to this session, and we eagerly await to hear your thoughts. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Agarwal Sahab, and all the esteemed speakers today, Mr. Jeff Houston, Ms. Amrita Chaudhary, Anupam Agarwal Sahab, Prasanna Gokhale ji, A.K. Jain Sahab, Nagaraju, T.V. Ramachandran Sahab, S.N. Gupta ji, ladies and gentlemen, and all participants. Very good morning, good afternoon to all of you. And a big thank you to the organizers for having me here. It's indeed a pleasure to be here today. See, I'm sure you will all agree that 2020 has been one of the most disruptive years in recent human history. In particular, the COVID-19 pandemic has made all organizations rethink that business must go online to take care of the customers. This pandemic has thus raised the importance of internet and internet-enabled services like never before. And new users on the net means requirement of more addressing space. The topic today is opportunities and challenges in IPv6 implementation and national roadmap for IPv6 implementation. Now let's for a while delve deep into the yesteryears, the addressing scheme that we had all been using all this while, and many still do, was IPv4. Now IPv4, I know, was created in the mid-80s. It had 32-bit address, and it sort of gave us all of 4 billion addresses. And there were two kinds of addresses, public and private. Private addresses were locally unique, and public addresses were globally unique. but it did not have capabilities like error checking and acknowledgement mechanisms and stuff like that. Then over a period of time, due to such wide proliferation of internet users and connected devices, the web started running out of these IPv4 addresses since the 1990s. And while sharp designers have discovered ways around this issue through NAT and NAT routers, but still, when IPv4 could not uphold the heap, finally IPv6 was designed. Now, as against 32-bit address, this is 128-bit address. It offers enormous, almost infinite addressing space. It provides more security, more encryption and decryption processes. It has auto configuration, and using IPv6, data can be sent in the range of 0 to 4 gigabits with the help of jumbo packets, which was not available in the case of IPv4. So clearly, it has a lot of advantages, and IPv6 is vastly different from IPv4. Not only in terms of complexity, but also in a lot of subtle ways. For instance, IPv6 operating systems have automatically created 2 IPv6 addresses. One with randomized MAC address in the suffix to hide the device identity, and so that nobody can identify who's connecting to its website. And the other one is IPv6 with the real MAC address, which is only used for end-to-end encrypted applications. Of course, such services for the time being are not so prevalent, but will be available with the next wave of internet innovations. Then besides this, there are a host of other innovations. For instance, you have end-to-end encryption. Widespread adoption of IPv6 will therefore make man-in-the-middle attacks significantly more difficult. Then you have more secure name resolution. The secure neighbor discovery send protocol is capable of enabling cryptographic confirmation to confirm the identity of the host at the time of the connection. So this renders address resolution protocol, poisoning, and other naming-based attacks more difficult. Then, of course, while IPv4 offered IPsec support as an optional feature, IPv6 supports it as a mandatory feature. And IPsec consists of a set of cryptographic protocols designed to provide security in data communications. Again, apart from that, there are a lot of very unique things about IPv6. For instance, it has a simplified header format with better quality of service, faster routing and switching. So there is also a traffic class, a flow label field, improving streaming of several applications like voice over IP, interactive gaming, e-commerce, and so on. Then what is very interesting about it is an IP host mobility. This feature enables a mobile node to arbitrarily change its location on an IP network while still remaining reachable and maintaining existing connections. So some practical uses of mobile IPv6 could be enterprise on the move. Examples say a courier companies, etc. Globally reachable home networks and internet-enabled transport, for instance, in the case of cars, buses, trucks, and so on. Then you have multicast, which conserves bandwidth with efficient auto configuration and service discovery. And then there are some innovative applications because IPv6 has been designed with many new features which make it possible to develop innovative applications which are not easily possible in the current IPv4 protocol. For instance, centralized building management system, intelligent transport systems, rural emergency healthcare, teleeducation, distance education, smart grids, and so on. But even in spite of all these so-called advantages, interestingly, there is a proposal for discussion in ITU-TSAG meetings from some countries for working on new IP schemes, as in their view, IPv6 may not be suitable for new services beyond 2030, or as the future networks, they call it. Because some experts feel that we need more trusted protocols, we need more robust security, and a lot of experts feel that probably IPv6 was initially designed only for computers and mobiles. And now we have a host of other customer premise equipments and end equipments, and then there'll be a host of heterogeneous networks for which probably you need a new kind of an IP. So there are claims, and then there are counterclaims from IETF, because IETF says that no, we are fully geared up and we are also working on a lot of enhancements and they should be able to take care of our future requirements. So it's an interesting debate. Probably that could be taken up in some other forum. But going back to my earlier thought process, in fact, if you look at, for instance, now if you look at the statistics in India, it's pretty interesting, because India has the highest number of IPv6 devices, nearly 360 million, almost double of that in the US. And this is mainly led by our country's innovative mobile operators, essentially Reliance Jio. And it's going to grow further with the advent of 5G, adoption of IoT, and increase in the number of smartphones. India probably could be the only country which has a fully IPv6 compliant operator of the scale and size of almost 400 million LT subscribers in the digital VoLT network. Our operators need to get more IPv6 addresses in advance so that they do not miss out, as had happened in the earlier version of internet. So we do have a clear-cut roadmap in the country, and we in the government clearly appreciate the fact that IPv6 is a must to realize the mission of Digital India. Indian government has realized the importance of IPv6 long ago, and our NTP 2012 recognizes the futuristic role of IPv6. Its aim was to achieve substantial transition to IPv6 in the country in a phased and time-bound manner. And DOT has also released National IPv6 Deployment Roadmap version 2 in 2015 as an important milestone in the journey of IPv6 transition and adoption of IPv6-based projects. A number of initiatives were also taken by the government for IPv6 proliferation in the country. And the significant outcome of this first roadmap was the formation of the India IPv6 Task Force, which was an attempt basically to bring all the industry stakeholders to a common platform to decide and debate on the issues for encouraging the adoption of IPv6 across the country. So government organizations are already on the path to transit to IPv6. IPv6 nodal officers have been appointed in all central ministries, departments, and states and union territories. And instructions have also been given to procure IPv6 ready equipment. And IC is working to transit the websites of all government organizations hosted on their servers. And an interesting information which I would like to share with all my users and panelists today is that TEC has established an IPv6 ready logo lab in 2013, which has the unique distinction of being approved by IPv6 ready logo forum. And I'm told that there are only 6 other labs in the world, namely one in the US, UNH IOL lab, one in Korea, TTA Korea, one in CHTTL Taiwan, IoT labs in Europe, and CN labs Bangalore, India, and BII China. So there are only 6 other such labs in the country, and we have the distinction of one of the 7 labs in the world. So the lab in TEC has the capability of conformance testing of IPv6 core protocols as per RFCs and interoperability testing. In this testing, the interoperability of the device is tested against 4 different operating systems with different IPv6 stacks, 2 of which act as router and remaining 2 as hosts. TEC is also the vice chair for the Asia Pacific region as per quarterly rolling plan by IPv6 Ready Logo Forum for reviewing the test result of other IPv6 Ready Logo accredited labs. Then we have also recently announced our mandatory testing for telecom equipment, and we recently notified phase 3 and phase 4 of the products. And there again, we have included testing for IPv6 as one of the essential requirements if the product supports it. So clearly Indian IPv6 ecosystem consists of many stakeholders like the government organizations, service providers, content and application providers, equipment manufacturers, cloud computing and data center providers, and so on. So on the road to IPv6 adoption, I feel we have to ensure that all stakeholders perform IPv6 journey in a coordinated manner. There are no doubt great challenges, as they have been addressed by some of my speakers who spoke before me, because you've got to upgrade the entire data centers and networking infrastructure, IPv6 content, IPv4 enabled client devices have to be upgraded to support IPv6. So although substantial amount of work has been done for IPv6 transition, as stipulated in roadmap version 2 of the Government of India, yet we find that in some segments, transition is taking longer time due to legacy networks and complex nature of the issue. TEC has recently come out with M2M IoT technical reports, and we have mentioned in those reports that all devices and gateways to be connected directly to PSTN or PLMN should have IPv6 or at least dual stack. So based on our TEC technical report, Bureau of Indian Standards, BIS, has already mandated IPv6 for all the smart electricity meters working on cellular technology. But having said that, I mean, some of the other bigger challenges which we find when we talk to the various stakeholders is that, see, while most network nodes support IPv6, barring very old and legacy equipments, a major challenge is on the part of IPv6 based content availability and old user devices. What do you do with that? See, while most major websites and content providers like Google, Facebook, Twitter, Netflix, WhatsApp, they have already enabled their services over IPv6. Newer devices, including smartphones, notebooks, IoT hardware, are also IPv6 enabled by default. However, a large number of websites still exist which are yet to adopt the new protocol. And the world, I feel, can never shift to IPv6 completely and discard IPv4 until all the websites support IPv6. Transition to a pure IPv6 facility is a mammoth task. Organizations need to ensure that there is no disruption to critical services, as a large number of web applications were devised without IPv6 in mind, and they would require some kind of a network plumbing, writing a translator for domains that are still running on IPv4. And last but not the least, the other barrier restraining companies is perception towards IPv6 security, because many feel that IPv4 has gone through the life cycle of discovery and repair of vulnerabilities, giving it the robustness which lacks in the case of IPv6, as it is still a work in progress. In reality, of course, IPv6 does address a lot of security issues, but unfortunately, the perception still remains. So now coming to the end of my just the parting thought, that while there is no denying the fact, and in fact, we all appreciate that the sustainable development and evolution of internet infrastructure is essential to the global cyberspace and digital economy. An IPv6 root server, which controls and manages the internet, can serve as a great tool. Creating such infrastructure at the national level is important. This can serve as a multi-stakeholder platform for diverse and innovative players from across the internet community, academia, and users in the country to collectively experiment and develop the local routing infrastructure to maintain and operate the new internet. As a critical internet resource, IPv6 root server system is pivotal to manage the security and stability of the internet. Historically, there are 13 root server authorities from the IPv4 era, with 10 in the US, only 2 in EU, and 1 in Japan, creating a somewhat unequal geographic distribution of critical internet management resources. Now, as we step into the next generation internet era, it offers us a great opportunity to manage this critical infrastructure locally and create a more open architecture which welcomes innovation and flexibility. And see, the main 3 factors that contribute to the adoption of IPv6 and establishing IPv6 root server locally are additional address space for new applications, emergence of new connected devices which require more addresses, and having a root server that will contribute to in-country expertise building on critical information infrastructure, as well as for promoting a major technological knowledge base within the country. Having a root server within the country would also facilitate easier access and surveillance by the law enforcement agencies. So these are all critical aspects which need to be kept in mind while developing the roadmap for India as an advanced knowledge-based economy, supported by a robust foundation of an efficient and secure internet for all. So to sum it up, the benefits of IPv6 are quite evident, and the opportunities that lie before us are humongous. And as we embark upon the journey to 5G, my sincere message to one and all, that let's get onto this bus and make the journey more secure and enjoyable. And let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. It was a wonderful talk by you. Specifically, you took us through the journey of entire IPv6 task force, which was created a few years back, and then how government is geared up to adopt IPv6. Also, we do have an IPv6 policy, and the logo part, which you said, you will be glad to know that I had that logo for some time on my laptop. So, it is indeed good to hear that part. So thank you once again, ma'am, for your talk. We will have some questions for you. So now we are entering into the Q&A round. Let us see if we do have any questions as questions starts pouring in. So at this point of time, I just like to note that we are approximately 20 minutes behind schedule. Okay, so we do have a Q&A, but possibly we'll have a reduced Q&A time at this point. So do we have any questions? Let me check the Q&A box. I don't see a question yet pouring in. Maybe people are taking some time to draft them. So in meanwhile, I'll start, ma'am, with you, because your thoughts are the latest one, which is lingering in the mind. So, Madam Tyagi, if you are there. Okay, I don't see her. So I'll go back to Geoff. So Jeff, when you said that possibly there is going to be a different address mechanism, okay, maybe IPv6 is not the answer. So can you elaborate on your thought? Because we do have players in this call itself where they are betting big on IPv6. So what is your take on that?
We originally designed these computer protocols in an era of mainframe computers. And the mainframe computer kind of did everything for everyone. It both initiated transactions and received transactions. It was both a client and a server all at once. And so we designed our protocols to match the computational technology. When the personal computer came along, and we started building dial-up modem networks, we very quickly found that it was impossible to make these computers at the edge servers. They were merely clients. And so they never were the recipient of an incoming connection request. They made outgoing requests. And that became a key observation, because at times it was just the CPE. If you gave the CPE just one address, you could put a large number of personal computers behind it. And as they tried to make an outgoing connection, they borrowed a port and a public address from the CPE and sort of rendezvoused with the public server. And so as we built the consumer internet, we actually didn't follow the conventional model of assigning every device a unique address. Client-server networks allowed us to shortcut that process. Don't forget, uniqueness costs. Maintaining everyone having a unique IP address actually gives us a huge overhead, right? Now, V6 was designed when we were shocked. That forecast in 1990 that we were going to run out in 1994 gave every single person in the IETF a wake-up call. We have to do something fast. And the thinking was to replicate V4 as much as possible. But as it turned out, we didn't have that urgency. We had a lot of flexibility to think about this. And indeed, we've had 30 years. And over that period, we've actually come to think about what is the model of networking, the model of clients and servers and rendezvous. What do we use addressing for? And when we think about that and try and think about answering two things, make it massive and make it cheap. We don't necessarily have to uniquely number every device in advance globally. We just need locally unique numbering. And a huge amount of the world is numbered on net 10 and 192.168, and it's okay. And we've also built applications and services that also use that model because that's the model we have. And so the result is that we don't need V6 to uniquely number everything. What we need to do is uniquely number conversations. Now, if that was all we had to do, uniquely number all the conversations, we'd still run out of addresses. We would still need V6, given. But then the content industry said, hang on a second. If we're going to make things really fast, we have to replicate content and bring it to everyone's doorstep. We have to bring content to the user. If you spend all your time sending your traffic to websites in the USA, in Europe, in anywhere else, you'll have a very, very slow internet. The way we make it lightning fast is to bring the content to you. And so all your transactions are local. The conversations are local, and necessarily the addressing of those conversations does not necessarily need to be globally unique. And that's what we're playing around with in our heads about how to build these new networks. And what that means for the industry at large is the sense of urgency for everyone to deploy IPv6 by tomorrow isn't there. We're a big industry globally, and we're a rich industry globally. Really, we are. If we needed to deploy IPv6 in a year, it would happen. We know how to do it. And Geo has actually proved that it's perfectly capable of doing it at a scale of the largest, most populous country on the planet. We know we can do it. So the fact we haven't actually says we don't feel that urgency yet. We don't feel that's the only way out. And, we're still sort of thinking and waiting about where to go. There's great work being done in labs on name-based networking. There's a huge amount of work being done in the domain name system over making the DNS fly faster, fly bigger, fly better. All of these things are happening at the same time. And it's a market, it's innovating, it's making changes. It's hard to say where we're all going to go, but the key is, yes, we're sort of looking at this problem and thinking about it. And that's a good thing. That's a really good thing.
So a final question from my side, Jeff. How do you see this IPv6 deployment rate going to impact the internet governance debate? Specifically, when we are having the first India Internet Governance Forum being organized this year, what kind of impact do you see on this debate which we are going to have?
I think there's one crucial part of what India has done that has informed a whole lot of debates. Because when you ask all of these service providers and ISPs all around the world, why haven't you done V6? And they say, oh, it's too expensive, it's too hard, there are so many problems. And then you point to Reliance Jio and all the other mobile providers in India. And you say, don't tell me that. You roll this out in a country that doesn't have the world's highest GDP. It does not. You roll this out in one of the most populous countries in the world, the second most populous country in the world. Don't tell me it's impossible. That's not the reason. And I think that informs the debate because it says, well, we now know we can do that if we need to. And that's really good. The question, I suppose, is as we look forward, what technologies will serve us getting even bigger, even faster, even better? And that whole issue of where do we place content? How do we place service? How do we rendezvous between the client and the content? is stuff that we're thinking today. And the whole rise of content distribution networks and that associated technology, it's only 5 years old and it's taken over the internet. Taken over it so much that now dear old SK Telecom is trying to sue Netflix for releasing too much content too quickly, you know, and those are interesting debates. It's not about V6 anymore. It's actually about what users want to do. And that's really at the heart of all this.
Right.
So yes, you've proved it's possible. No one should tell me or you can't do it. We know everyone can. Let's move on now from that point. Yes, it's possible.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Satyam Gupta has his hand up for a question.
Yes, Mr. Gupta.
Yeah, thank you. And Jeff, I'm really impressed and we learned a lot from your presentation. And I just have one question like a scientist. I also want to ask a question. The question is you brought out the flag theory of V for flag and you say V6 flag is not there yet. But as you know, US have already flagged IPv6 sunset 2024, I think. So how they can afford or how they can dare to have a flag of V6 in next 3-4 years? Any idea, and can we learn from them?
I think we've learned over a number of years here that the public sector purchasing program is less and less significant in computing. The money, the $2 trillion company called Apple, the $1 trillion company that we called Facebook, Microsoft, Google, Akamai, Alibaba, Tencent, they dictate this industry, not governments anymore. And the government's purchasing power, by comparison, is insignificant to the market. And so I don't think it matters anymore. What matters is that upper level sort of content economy where Netflix is a major player, not the US government. And we're actually all building to content. We're building to applications. And so flag days at the lower levels of the protocol don't matter. If I could share with you one insight that I think that's happened to us unconsciously over the last 20 years. 20 years ago, it was all about moving bits. It was all about circuits, and I want, fatter circuits, megabytes, tens of megabytes, gigabytes, and we were obsessed about circuitry. Then the conversation changed to platforms. It was all about Windows, and Windows, Microsoft dominated. But then it became a conversation about Apple and iOS and Androids, and the platform was the dominant economic force. Applications sat on platforms. What platforms said mattered. The Apple App Store mattered. But we've gone beyond that. It doesn't matter anymore. Applications matter. The latest protocols that we deploy aren't bedded in the platform. They're inside the application. Google's Quick is inside the application. The Facebook app is not an app. It's an entire platform ecosystem, and it actually tells the underlying platform nothing. And so we're now dealing in an application-centric world where all of that functionality sits inside the app. Even the DNS, which used to be common infrastructure, when we talk about DNS over HTTPS and all these changes, what we're really talking about is lifting the name system into the application. And so today's internet is actually based around content and service in applications. This is an application-centric world. Now, that's where the money is, and those folk have an agenda. They have a big agenda, and they're in a hurry. They're not going to wait for the CPE to get fixed. They're going to tunnel through it. They're not going to wait for the CPE to do better DNS. They're going to ignore it. They're not even going to wait for the ISP to do better DNS or to do this or do that. They're going to ignore it. All they want to do is get to the local data center as quickly as possible. And actually, I don't care about the protocol anymore. it doesn't matter. So if you put yourself in the mind of Facebook or in the mind of Google and think about how you're going to make your next $1 trillion, you actually start to think about a world where all the bits underneath are being commoditized and cheapened because your agenda is actually all about the user and what the user wants to do, and servicing that at a scale and speed that is undreamt of, and also with security and privacy protected. Why do they want to protect privacy? They actually don't care about you and me. But the last thing Facebook wants is for Facebook's profile of me to get leaked to Google or Apple. They're scared about each other. And so not only is it an application-centric world, it's the world of the paranoid application, where every application is actually worried about every other application that coexists on this common platform. With that in mind, this is why we're seeing changes in the underlying internet. The bits below are being commoditized because the value, the innovation, and the investment is moving up the protocol stack, because that's why users spend money. And, that's what we're fixating on. So it's a fascinating change. And, in 10 years' time, maybe 20, we'll be writing textbooks about this, about the evolution of the internet up the protocol stack. It's a great story.
Thank you, Jeff. It's really great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So do we have any questions? So there is a question for, I think, Madam Tyagi. Ma'am, are you available? Okay. So
there are 2 more questions in the Q&A pod.
Okay. So the first question is from Sachin Mugali. How is the IPv6 rollout handled across, as most of systems won't support as of now, and how is it mandate made for all users? Is there any timeline defined for it? So, Mr. Nagaraj, you have rolled out one of the biggest IPv6 network in the country. So, would you like to take this question? So, Sachin is asking that what possibly is the timeline, and is there any kind of mandate?
I touched upon this one, that the devices and the content, these are the 2 things which actually is not in the control of a service provider. And the content, it can be handled because you concentrate upon the 6 or 7 market segments which needs to be addressed, and what the top 10 sites where the traffic is going. So we really have to actually make 1 million websites into IPv6. If we actually do it, top about say 500 websites or even top 50 websites where the major traffic is going, and if there is control, as we have seen in our network itself, that at least today, if I'm 93%, 95% I'm able to serve, if I'm able to actually convert the chart which I showed, if I'm able to convert all those, this one, I'll actually move to 98, 99%. Rest of the 1%, I didn't have to really bother. That's what I can actually say. The second thing is, that of course, that we don't have control on the real devices which ultimately customer takes and use. To tell you frankly, Apple was not supporting IPv6. Apple was not supporting XLAN. We actually only about 12.5 iOS version, by working very hard with Apple, we were able to actually force him to introduce in the iOS this one. It's not easy, but actually you have to take in every device manufacturer, and this you have to take. And what we have seen is about 80%. For example, we actually have started releasing our own devices. We are manufacturing our own devices that we make completely IPv6. And luckily, that with the growth of this entire thing, CP is not so difficult, because the chip industry actually has really marvelously grown in the past 10 years. And the performance power, CPU and memory, and this actually vastly increased. So I don't actually have a challenge in keeping a cost low in the CPs and still getting this facility, this one. But the problem comes majorly on the applications and this one. For example, cloud. There's a lot of talk which is going on the cloud, but cloud, if you actually go in the open form and this thing, everything is IPv4. If you take 5G, I have been struggling with whatever the development is been happening within this market. I'm actually forcing them to go to IPv6. It's not easy in the application or the arena, because they're afraid to actually do on IPv6. They're afraid to actually do it because that application's may misbehave.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about actually that we actually mind it, but ultimately what we are trying to do is keep a proxy in the case of any applications. The front ending which actually use the queries, that will be IPv6. Internally, you actually have whatever you have, but the address space is very, very small. Even if you give public IP address, it's not actually very great. And the same way, the devices, the customer, this one I'm not able to control, but actually, I actually put my front end device, like it could be a set-top box, it could be a ONT, it could be of course, the device itself, with the help of which actually I'll convert into an IPv6. So I will actually make the entire network into IPv6, and the content actually about 99% of the content I'll actually concentrate upon getting into IPv6. And I will actually make with my DNS to actually get the addresses done, query done only, and response done only on a quad query response. I think I have achieved the major objective of converting network into IPv6. And that is how actually we broke down the problem into a simpler things, and actually we could actually achieve the success. We are not entirely there. The industry is as it is. As you say, that the other service providers have started actually doing here. Whatever actually that the pairing I have got with them, 50% of the actual traffic still comes on IPv4. And whatever they query, it still comes on IPv4. But still, that one by one, actually, we can actually address it and actually make it to go towards IPv6.
So Mr. Nagaraj, parting question. Since there is a lot of focus in IETF in terms of IPv6 deployment over constrained networks, and that is what is going to be the future in terms of 5G, where do you think Jio is heading on that front?
So once again, of course, one of the good initiatives is taken is even on the 5G. We are trying to actually manufacture. Of course, we can't control the devices. The user can actually go for a costly device and it can actually have. But actually, I don't have much worries over there because the newer devices, Android or any other operating systems and all, they're all IPv6 supported. So there's not much different over here. And as far as the 5G core is concerned, that also a major development is happening within the organization, that we are actually forcing it to actually happen upon IPv6. Even the cloud strategy, what we are pursuing within Jio, that actually we are trying to do only on IPv6. And that should actually help us to actually further actually go from wherever we are into above 98% in the next 1 or 2 years.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nagaraj. So, Mr. Gokhale, I'll come to you with the question from Manoj Mittal. So essentially, he is relating to the sentiment which you shared, that CPE are the point where the networks are facing troubles in terms of IPv6 deployment. So he is suggesting that actually it is a two network which needs to be managed when it is a dual stack and it is a lot of cost. So would you like to answer to Manoj on this question?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, Manoj, I think running dual stacks in the journey of transitioning towards a complete IPv6 network, running dual stack is a given, right? Every operator needs to run with dual stack in the interest of supporting new devices which support IPv6 as well as the legacy devices which support IPv4. And as you mentioned, yes, it will be a complex network, and the entire network and the equipments and the software becomes complex. The maintenance of that becomes complex. The costs are additional in order to maintain that. I think those are the things that the service providers have taken it into their consideration. And I think across world over, the dual stack network is most of the operators where we have seen a lot of adoption of IPv6 that has happened. Most of the operators have deployed dual stack in their network, and that is how it is running today. And when we say dual stack, it means that V4 will co-work with V6. V4 devices will still talk using a NAT 4.4, etc. So I think those will continue, and it's only to see how it is going to move further in the backdrop of the evolution that is happening, which is going to be application centric, as Jeff very beautifully explained. I think we'll need to see whether the urgency of moving to IPv6 will continue to be as we perceive today, or that urgency will go away and there will be a different kind of evolution that will happen from an application centric where the underlying protocol will not matter, and it will basically be a tunneled application to application conversation. I think those are the trends and evolution that we will all need to think about, work towards, and then see, because at the end of the day, we need to see the use cases, the evolution of the use cases and the evolution of the application, the direction in which that is progressing, and the technology evolution will take that path. And that's how I think we will need to closely think about it, and then see how that evolution and work towards that particular path.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gokhale.
Mr. Satyan Gupta.
Yes. So thank you for your response. So this is the close of the Q&A session, and now I will invite Mr. Satya and Gupta to give the concluding remarks and give the vote of thanks. And this is my privilege to introduce him. Mr. Gupta is an international expert in NGN technologies, regulation, interconnection, and broadband with 40 plus years of experience. He is globally known as NGN Guru. He's the first Indian recipient of IPv6 Hall of Fame 2019 entry by Global IPv6 Forum, and also the chairman of India IPv6 Council. He has earlier served in ministries of communication and railways and TRI. Mr. Gupta, over to you for the concluding remarks and vote of thanks.
Thank you, Anupamji. It's indeed a great honor and pleasure for me to offer vote of thanks as well as concluding remarks. It is like a dual stack kind of thing I have to do in a very limited time, which we are already late. So I'll be more randomized actually in my both the roles actually. But I have to start with thanking BIF, and especially our President TV Sahab, to give me this opportunity and also to organize this and this pleasant job which I like to me. And his own starting that he will not say anything or he'll be brief, that was a great message. The brevity what he had was the real all wisdom in that. And especially brought now we are going into the world of devices. So it will be an internet of things, and that is what will put pressure on the address space, and for scaling of V6 is required like 7 billion device what he told in India. Actually it will be 10 billion if you go by simple arithmetic. So for that I'm really thankful to him. I'm really thankful to our chief guest, actually the Madam Deepa Tyagi, the ITS and the senior DDG of TC, and it showed up that she knows it all. She have done it all also. And from the government point of view, she made great statements actually, and few of them which she have already done, like these IPv6 logo approval lab, just one of the 6th in the world actually. And not only that, she also have continued the IPv6 testing in her mandatory testing framework for the telecommunication, and gone ahead to make it mandatory for the standard in BIS also as an essential requirement for most of the future devices. That is what she has herself done on behalf of the government. And the main thing what she told in the end was the need of a national root server in the country. And as all of us know, because of the V4 and technological limitation and historical background, India missed the bus of having its own root server. But now V6 brings out that opportunity, as all of us know, and the government also wants it, as Madam mentioned. It will create the capability, the capacity to create the trusted critical infrastructure in the country, and our people will have to plug and play with that. And that is what called innovation. That is what Jeff also mentioned. The innovation should not be stopped. So whatever you want to do. Don't worry about the failure. Don't worry about whether it will work, or whether it will be relevant or not, or whether it is required or not. And that is the message Madam gave, and that is what we should be actually hampering on. And then our Anil Jainji, our special guest of honor, Anil Jainji, the CEO of Nixie. Actually, he's doing it all, and it's great thing what he's doing for IPv6 training, skill development, and also giving the IPv6 address free bundled with V4, of course. That is called freemium in our technical term, freemium. So he gives it free if you buy the other thing with him. So whichever is the lowest in price, that will be made free. And that is a great thing towards an other thing he's doing. And he found time to be here, being very busy because of these IIGF program, which is heading. So that was a great thing. And now, of course, Professor Jeff Houston, our friend from APNIC, chief scientist, really showed how a scientist should work, how a scientist should behave, and what is the knowledge of a scientist can have. And that was a great thing, actually. And he has answered a lot of our questions, what we were grabbing in the dark. And he also brought the relevance of DNS. And he mentioned IP address may become irrelevant, but not the DNS, and with that, not the root server, because DNS root servers. So the name will stay, number may become irrelevant. That is a great message he has given. And also what he mentioned about this new type of internet or protocol. Of course, I don't agree with that. Maybe regretfully, Professor Jeff. So according to me, so you should talk of a new protocol if our current protocol is broken. They say, don't try to repair something if it is not broken. And as Madam also mentioned, and I also believe, our IP is not broken. Just we have to upgrade to V6 and make all the capabilities of V6, exploit all the RFC of IETF. Actually, there is so much wealth of knowledge, information. We can solve any problem, whatever people are telling, especially because of IoT devices and the 10 million, 20 billion, all those devices, they say the current protocol may not be able to handle. But no, by using all the capabilities what V6 can give to us, we can manage the show. So it is not broken. And that is my personal, let us say, experience. And now, we are really thankful to you, Mr. Jeff, for all these things. And we will need you again and again and again in BIF as well as in our IIGF, and also in my forum, which I formed called Bharat IPv6 Forum, which is mainly vision have taking the country towards Atmanirbhar connected Bharat, taking from our Prime Minister. And it is all our stakeholders are basically cross industry people who are there, members of the country's government task force of V6. And our aim is just to have the capacity in the country so that we can manage and control the trusted and critical internet infrastructure, irrespective of what protocol it will be using. Actually, that is the main thing. And we have just started, actually. And I'm really thankful for giving me this opportunity also. So thanks a lot, Jeff. And now, of course, our CTO from ACT, Mr. Prasanna Gokhale, actually, they are already doing the job. They are our almost biggest fixed line broadband service provider. They are already using V6, as I mentioned, and he actually brought out very clearly what are the opportunities, what are the good thing about the V6. And of course, he also brought out the challenges also, which was very well actually discussed and deliberated by Mr. Nagaraj from Jio. And as you know, Jio has taken the country's flag on the globe, actually, and we are the biggest adopters of V6 in the country. More than 400 million, or about 67% of our internet users are already on V6. And Mr. Nagaraj have already showed what they have done. And how they have done it, how difficult it was for them, but they were there. And that is what they called, as you know, and Jeff mentioned also, where is the money? Actually, service providers are not seeing the ROI. They are making the investment, but ROI goes to someone else, to the application providers or the other service providers. But Jio took the risk. Actually, they say build it and they will come, and that is proving now. That is showing off what Mr. Anand, Mr. Nagaraj have also mentioned. So with that, I think great learning for me especially, and I hope for all of you also. And Anupamji, you set the trend in the beginning that what is the objective of the whole IPv6 as well as the Internet Governance Forum of India. Again, having a trusted and a critical digital infrastructure which enables innovation and which is also open, actually. And all the speaker, the great speaker, and including Mr. Jeff and Madam Deepa Tyagi, all actually address that. So the requirement is given, requirement is there, what we have to do, but all of us have to work together. Especially for my forum, I'll solicit the support of our international communities like APNIC through Mr. Jeff and also ICANN, so that we can achieve our ambition to have our own root server in the country, even if it is for capacity building or for experimentation, or later on it may become irrelevant, as Jeff mentioned. So even after that, we will still like to have one, for which we will need the support of all of you at the international level, because half of you have done that. You have been there. You have the capabilities. So we will need guidance and support from all of us. With that, I'm really thankful to all of you for giving me this opportunity, and thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We will leave at this point in time. So
thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone.
So enjoy your day, and
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Have a good evening and good rest remainder of the week. Thank you, everyone. Keep safe.
Thank you. Bye.